Thank you for joining us. Today we have some very special guests joining us with some exciting information, some about Strata and some about the city sessions that we've held over the last 6 weeks. So stay tuned for that. We have Catherine Lezer with us today from the Strata Community Association WA. So thank you for joining us, Catherine. And Michelle will be with us in a moment. She's just having a few issues with her camera, but she'll be on soon. So first and foremost, I wanted to talk a little bit about a really, really big change that's taken place in the Strata world. In anybody who lives in an apartment complex in the East Perth area will know that the amended Strata Titles Act of '85 was reformed and it's been implemented and has taken effect as of the 1st of May this year. So massive news. And we've got Catherine with us to talk a little bit more about what that means for us, for those who live in Strata complexes, and for those wishing to purchase into a Strata complex. So, Catherine, could you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
The good news is, Raj and viewers, is that it's making the Strata world a little bit more professional. So there are a lot of new laws and regulations that make the Strata managers do quite a bit more work, which is good because all the people who live in Strata benefit from that. But there's also some new and interesting requirements for Council of Owners and for Strata companies in general about how they manage their buildings. And it's a really good change. It's really positive. I mean, it's been taken a long time, over 30 years, 35 years to get new laws here. And it really is now setting us up for much more professional running of buildings on all levels.
Brilliant. And I think also there's a lot more accountability, whereas previously it's always kind of been a very grey area. Hopefully we're getting more into the black and whites where people know exactly in most scenarios where they stand, which will be a lot better for people who have no idea of Strata complexes.
Absolutely. And in terms of buying into a Strata complex, there's information that potential buyers are going to receive, so they can make a much more informed decision about what they're buying into, not just how the place looks, but also how the place is run.
Absolutely, which is the most important thing when buying into that. So we had lots of questions, as you can imagine, about different scenarios and different things that people wanted answers on. A lot of them obviously would be legal answers, which is not what Catherine does. So we've kind of sorted through them, and there are some questions here that we can help with and we can answer, and we can sort of give advice based on the Act itself. So what I'll do is I'll ask the questions, and then Catherine, if you'd like to just give everybody a little rundown on what those answers will be. Will that be okay?
That's a great idea. And yes, this is definitely not legal advice, but I am giving general advice.
Yes, we'll definitely confirm that. So one of the questions was, is it true that Strata managers will have to re-tender before November 2020 for their contracts?
Yes, absolutely. Short answer is yes. The new laws state that the 1st of November, all current contracts that are not in the new form under the current regulations, under the new lot of regulations, are void. So Strata managers are working very hard behind the scenes to make sure that there's new contracts, they're in the right terminology based on the new regulations and the new Act, and that they can be voted on. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it's not a decision that the Council of Owners can make. Actually, it is a decision for all owners. However, there is one little thing that can change that, is if all the owners vote to say that the Council of Owners can make that decision and sign that contract, that can happen that way. Otherwise, if that is not an actual vote of all the owners, then to say that the Council of Owners can do that, all owners have to make that decision. And beware, if you get to the 1st of November, all your contracts are void. You won't have any Strata management, which is not a good spot to be in. Yep.
So in regards to that being for Strata, do you think that will come through for other contracts as well, or is it just solely for the Strata manager at this moment?
Only for Strata managers.
Sure. Okay, excellent. Another question was, will the council now be held more personally accountable for their actions, more so than they were before?
Well, councils have always needed to act in good faith and act honestly, and those basic things. I think we can all say that is correct. But the new laws go a little bit further and say that the council owners must act honestly, with loyalty and in good faith, and they must exercise a degree of care and diligence and must not make improper use of their position. There must be agendas and minutes of all council owners' meetings, and all correspondence should be kept. So those are new things that are in these new laws. They were best practice before, but they were not laws. Now they are laws. And I think the big tip here is that to understand that it's the council of owners that manages the complex. It's the council of owners that makes all the decisions for the complex. It is not the strata managers. The strata managers may be called strata managers, but they actually don't manage the building. All the management decisions are made by the council of owners. So it's very important who you do elect as a council of owners. You should be asking people well in advance of your AGMs what kind of skills they have. It would be, if you had your dream team of council of owners, you might have a lawyer on there, you might have an accountant on there, you might have an engineer on there, you might have someone who's used to project managing big, projects. There's a lot of things. You really need a broad range of skills to be on a council of owners, and it's not a job that should be taken lightly. It is also quite, as you and I were talking about, Raj, there's quite a lot of time commitment and dedication.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think it's a very important role, and just because there's some new things in the laws, it doesn't mean that they should be thought of as an impediment to getting things done. The council of owners really is the conduit between all the owners and the work that needs to be done to keep the facility or the building running.
Lovely. Thank you, Catherine, for that. Another question was, should a strata manager be showing you qualifications when they do go to tender for your building? Is that an important thing that we should be looking at? Qualifications and education?
The new Act does have now provisions that all strata managers will need to have certain qualifications, certain education, but they've given the strata managers 4 years to get those. So when we get to the 1st of May 2024, yes, all contracts will need to show those kind of qualifications. But for the minute, you have to understand that we got announced 2 weeks before these laws came in. 2 weeks. We had 2 weeks' notice in the middle of a pandemic, right, to suddenly train up hundreds of strata managers, get them across all the new laws, to get them across all of the new contracts they have to do. There's a raft of things that strata managers need to do. They're behind the scenes that we're not going to be seeing. And I think that Landgate understood the amount of work that this would cause. So they've given them a 4-year time period to get all those qualifications. That said, some people were already working on it just as the laws hit. So it won't take 4 years for most people to get those qualifications. I sat in about 8 hours worth of training on the new laws, and almost all of the strata managers were sitting there with me. So they're getting very good training. So don't be concerned about the qualifications of your strata manager, even if it's not on the contract right this second.
Excellent, thank you. Should strata complexes now be looking to consider new bylaws, things like no smoking in common properties, where you can impose fines where at the moment you can't, just to eradicate or try to reduce bad behaviour?
Isn't bad behaviour one of our constant things? Now, so I'm going to talk generally about bylaws for a second. Yes, now is a great time to be looking at your bylaws. What we used to understand, all the terminology we used to understand for bylaws previously, like Schedule 1, Schedule 2, and these kinds of terms, they've all gone. They're all changed now. And a lot of the things we had in our Schedule 1 bylaws are now out of the bylaws and are sitting in the Act.
Right.
How you must manage your building in terms of governance and AGMs and things like that are no longer in your bylaws for your building. They're actually in the Act.
That's brilliant.
That's helpful, right? And just in case there's any doubt, if your bylaws, you don't have to change your bylaws now. There's no requirement that you do it. But if your bylaws contradict the Act wins.
Yeah.
So don't be any doubt about that. But the smart people are already starting to look at how do they change their bylaws, and things like pets, smoking, parking, all of those typical things that we get in strata world. Now is the time to look at, do we have adequate bylaws for that? And if we do we have bylaws that then say, right, if there's a breach of our bylaws, what happens next? You know, we have to have a process. It's not just enough to say, oh, there's a bylaw. You also have to have a bylaw to say how the breaches are informed to the people, what happens next. And then if you get through to a fine situation, it still has to be in your bylaws.
Excellent.
But, you know, I would recommend, it's not that much money to go to a strata legal professional and ask them to read all your current bylaws, consolidate them, and then get briefed about what your building would like to see in any new bylaws. Now's the time to do it.
Fantastic. I think that's a really important point, because there are a lot of things in bylaws that are set from the developer that necessarily are not tailored to what, when you actually live in a complex, what you actually need. So definitely.
That's right. And there's a lot of conflicting bylaws. There's bylaws that were back in, you know, from the 80s. I mean, you know, some of it, a lot of it's not relevant now. A lot of it needs to be changed. This is a great moment to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a big one is children playing on common property. That was a big one, because we can't be biased against age and things like that now. So they will have to get rid of that one, I hear.
You can't stop people from enjoying their own property. And don't forget that people, if you own in a strata complex, you own part of the common property. So you're allowed to be on the common property. You're allowed to do things on the common property. You just can't make an unreasonable amount of noise. But kids playing for a little bit isn't a big deal, in my opinion, right?
Of course.
But I think we can all get on. I mean, you know, if you live in a community, it's community living. You don't go into a complex thinking you're going to have no neighbours.
Absolutely, and you're signing up for that when you sign that contract. So do you think the new rules will affect the way buildings management and buildings that have a bigger sort of management structure around them, do you think it will affect them in any way? Will it change their jobs?
Affect building management?
Yeah.
It will, because there are some new requirements for building. So firstly, you need to understand, I mean, I would hope most people do this anyway, but they understand what their building is. They understand how much it's worth. They understand their insurance. They understand, you know, what things are getting serviced, how often. But now in the new strata laws, it asks for you specifically to have a 10-year plan. Now that's going to really help everybody, whether it's building managers or council owners or anyone buying into a building, to understand what assets they have, how often they need to be replaced, what kind of money is available to replace those things. And it's a really important document when you're managing a large building. So that's one. There's also sustainability initiatives are being encouraged in the new laws, which is great. And there's another interesting thing in the new laws, that now you can spend up to $500 per lot on improving the common property. Whereas before, the laws only talked about maintaining the common property. Now you can maintain, but also you've got up to $500 specifically for improving the common property per lot. So if it's a 50-lot building, then you've got $25,000 you can then do improvements on, provided you've got the budget for it. And if it goes above that $25,000, then yes, you have to go back to a meeting and you have to, you know, talk to all the owners. But at least that gives you some ability to upgrade some of the things in your building. Another interesting thing we haven't talked about is meetings. So the practicalities of meetings. Meetings have changed a little bit. That quorums used to be, so in some buildings, not in my building and probably not in yours, Raj, but in some buildings getting a quorum for a meeting is very hard. Right. But now quorums, how it works is you turn up to a meeting. If there isn't a quorum as required, you just wait half an hour. And then at the half an hour point, whoever's in the room, that's deemed to be the quorum. So my big tip there is turn up to your meetings, because if there's only 2 people in the room, basically they're going to be directing what goes on in the building for the next year. So we really need as many owners to be interested in how their building runs and to turn up to the meetings. And one other thing on that point is now have meetings electronically. Now, this is great. It doesn't, the Act is not prescriptive. It doesn't say it has to be Zoom or any of those things. It just says you can do it electronically, and you can't disadvantage people who don't want to do it electronically. So you kind of have to take it some sort of middle ground. Some people want to be in a room, some people want to be electronically. It's not one or the other, but it gives you the ability to do both. Now, that's another great way of reaching more owners and getting more owners involved in the management of the building.
Yeah, especially given the current climate that everyone's been in, people are a lot more in tune with using the electronic way of communicating. So it's quite good, and timing's been quite good in terms of that.
That's why we got 2 weeks notice for the new laws. We pushed very hard because we knew we were going to have meetings electronically, and wonderfully the government decided to do it, but it caused a huge amount of work.
Oh, I can imagine. I have a question here that's just come through from a gentleman called Roger. So he's actually a tenant himself. However, he's asking when tenants do come into a property and absolutely sort of abuse it and ruin it, how are they able to continue to stay in those properties? And will the new Strata Act have anything in there that will, the reform, will it have anything in there that will protect owners and protect other residents from these types of people who reside in those lots?
It's not a strata matter, unfortunately. The strata relationship is between the strata company and the owner. So yes, there's a resident in that, and the resident uses the common property, presumably goes up and down the lifts and whatever. But unless that resident is impacting other residents in the building in terms of noise or something being unsafe, maybe a strange smell or something, there's very little that a strata company can do. It doesn't fall in the world of strata law. It falls presumably in the Residential Tenancy Act.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So also potentially like a civil matter if it's between residents that they would have to deal with themselves privately.
Yeah.
Possibly.
If it was causing a nuisance or noise, then it's a strata matter, and strata can issue a breach, and then the owner can deal with it that way. But if it's between the owner and the tenant and it's really not a strata matter, then we don't get involved. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Roger. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Roger.
So is there anything else that you'd like to cover today? I mean, we've had loads of information and it's going to keep coming. I know that there's some really good webinars that your the Strata Community Association are putting on so that people can look at this in more depth and detail. So is there any information you'd like to give us on that and how people can join the Strata community?
Yes, of course. So the first place to go to is strata.wa.gov.au. That's the Landgate site specially set up for the new laws. That's got heaps of wonderful information about the new strata laws, what's changing, what's not changing, how people can get help. That's the first thing. And secondly, yes, I'd encourage everyone to join up to Strata Communities Association. That's a small cost to join, but you get access to wonderful webinars, in-person, well, we used to do in-person training. I guess we will do it again eventually.
One day.
A whole lot of really good information to help you as the council of owners or as a resident, as an owner, as an interested owner, to be more informed. Yeah.
Brilliant. And I know that I have been to a few of your seminars at the Crown and they have been really good, really informative. And there's always a lot of other organisations there, so you can talk to other people, compare and get ideas from other strata managers and building managers and companies. So it is really helpful.
Yeah, it's a very interesting area. I mean, I'm biased because I live in Strata, but it's fascinating. It's not just about how you live. It's about community living. It's about living with other people as a community. It's about managing the facility. It's about, I mean, there's about 100 different laws that impact. It's occupational health, it's safety, it's employment law. There's 100 different laws that impact strata management. It's not just the strata laws. But yes, today I'm talking about the strata laws. But I find it fascinating and I love strata living, and you wouldn't find me living on the ground ever.
Exactly. We're just one big neighbourhood that live upwards.
Yeah, exactly.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today, Catherine. We really appreciate it. And after this, what I'll do is I will add all the contacts that you've given us and all the information. So thank you so much for that. And we'll get that on so that people can have a point of reference and get themselves signed up to the Strata Community Association and get all that information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a lovely evening. Bye-bye. Right, we have Michelle, but we can't see Michelle. Can you hear us, Michelle?
I can.
You can. She's apricot. We don't know what's wrong with the camera. We think there's firewall issues, so we're very sorry. But Michelle is there. You are, aren't you?
I am.
Excellent.
I even put lipstick on for you, Raj.
Oh God. And I can't even get a picture on for you. So
I know.
so sorry. I'm so sorry. But thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it. And you're here today to talk to us a little bit more about the incredible and successful city sessions that we held as a part of the working group. And one of the key parts in that whole working group was you, because you helped us source our performers and our locations. So do you want to tell the audience a little bit more about what City Sessions is, if they haven't already heard about it or seen it, which I'm sure most of them have?
Well, it was what an amazing project this was. So we'd been having conversations with East Perth Community Group through Anne-Marie Ferguson, the wonderful Anne-Marie Ferguson, about how the company I work for, Fraser's Property, and with Fraser's Suites could best support the community initiatives well before this COVID time. And we really found we're on the same wavelength. As you know, Anne-Marie's a really passionate community builder and takes great care to note people's skills. So she knew I was a professional musician in my past life. So when she rang me and said, hey, can we put musicians on balconies in 48 hours? It made perfect sense to me. So I think along with yourself, Raj, it was a really scary first city sessions we did. I think everything was shutting down so quickly. I think I remember the first performance was straight after the AFL last game, wasn't it?
It was.
My goodness, it just felt like everything
surreal.
was, yeah, it was like apocalyptic kind of, I think. So we ran these city sessions, and we just got such a great response, didn't we? I mean, we had so many messages from community that and such great support from Council of Owners. And the musicians just were so grateful that they had a platform to show their skills, and something that just felt a bit normal for all of us, I think.
Absolutely. How important do you think it was for the community, so the community that you were around at that point, for these events to be taking place?
On a personal level, from the feedback that we've had through the City Sessions page, I think overwhelmingly the connection to live music was kind of a salve or a release valve for most people. I know as a professional performer for many years, I mean, I always felt better after I'd performed. I don't think you ever involved with music and kind of feel worse after. So I think that was definitely something on a personal level from what we're hearing from most people. On a community level, I think it was kind of reassuring that, because it was a grassroots collective community action that required so many stakeholders to participate, I just think that it felt like we had a little bit of control, maybe. And I think also we were building relationships while we created this thing that was kind of supposed to be an impossible thing to do. So yeah, it was really, really humbling to be part of. Actually, it was great.
And I think it was quite empowering as well. Although there were rules, we followed them, but we did what we wanted to do. So it was quite a nice kind of balance there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So you can't see me, but I'm waving my arms around everywhere.
And I know that you had a lot of contact and a lot of communication with the musicians that performed, in terms of obviously how this has affected them with COVID and the reduction of performances that they've had. I mean, what kind of place were some of them in? Because I know that some of them had just not performed for months and they were not in good places.
Yeah, JobKeeper's not there for musicians, as with a few industries. So really scary. A lot of them have had to move back into homes. They've cancelled tours. They've, the bottom's been pulled out of their industry. Anyone associated with hospitality, I think. So yeah, look, we weren't able to help lots of them, but I think hopefully it highlighted the plight of musicians, and I think, I hope that it really highlighted the importance and the value of art as a general sort of important platform and sector at this time.
Absolutely, and connecting that art with the community and just making it a piece together was just that felt good. You felt like you were a part of that, so it was a nice feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Very just. It was kind of a normal thing to do, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Not in normal times.
And I'm going to ask you a really difficult question now, and I'm nervous you're not going to answer it, but what was your best performance from City Sessions throughout the whole gig, the whole 6 weeks? What was your best?
The whole 6 weeks? Super hard to answer that. Look, those musicians had to trust us, that we had everything in place, that we were looking after them. It was just scary at every step of the way.
We had gloves, we had masks, we had everything ready.
We did, but for me, I think it had to be the one that you were one of the ones you were part of, and probably Jake Hatch, when that first one again. I think when everything was shutting down, and I've known Jake since about 8 years old with his and his family. So for me, hearing just being part of his gig was that I think I'll always remember that. It's pretty special.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And as these restrictions lift, what do you hope to do? What do you want to see more of? What do you want to do more of as these restrictions lift?
For myself,
just even on a personal level, yeah.
Bigger efforts to support local. I do try, but sometimes I'll take the easy path. So I definitely will try and step out of my way a little bit to do more of that. I hope everybody does that. I hope everyone talks to their neighbours more, gets more involved in the community, be an active part of the vision. It'd be really interesting to see what community aspects flow over post-COVID. I hope all the good stuff does.
And what do you think we should do next?
With our crazy city sessions team?
With our crazy sessions, with our crazy workshops, what should we do?
Well, I think we're open for suggestions, and we're obviously not scared to take it on. So
So people who are listening, let us know what you want, because we need to make it a big one. Once we're all back to our new normal, we need to do something to celebrate.
Yeah, it's got to be a community decision. I think that's probably the magic of why it worked. So I think we're pretty open to suggestions.
Oh, we've got a lovely message from Janice here. She just says, well done on organising the sessions. It was a great incentive, and we really enjoyed all the live entertainment around the other areas. So I know a lot of the buildings didn't get to take part in it, but going forward, that doesn't mean that you won't. It just means that we can now connect with more people, and we can have even more venues. So it'll be incredible as it goes forward. The new different, the new norm, whatever we're going to do, I think it'll be amazing. The more people we get involved, the bigger and the better it can be the next time.
Absolutely. Taking the music to the people, Raj.
That's it. It's all about keeping it local.
Keeping it local.
Yeah. But thank you so much, Michelle, for your time today. I really appreciate it. And thanks again for everybody who was listening. I just think it was really important for people to understand the reasons and the organisation and the time that City Sessions took, and what it was all about. And I'm glad that it did what it should have done, which is connect people, connect the community, and just give people a nice thing to enjoy in a time where things aren't so great. So thank you so much. Stay safe, stay well. Thank you, Michelle. And
thank you.
We'll see you all next week. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.